Leftovers are one of the most normal things in modern life. You eat half your dinner, put it in the fridge, and assume it'll still be there tomorrow. Milk waits in the back. Raw chicken waits. That takeout box waits. We barely think about it. But for most of history, that was not normal at all. A bowl of stew sitting overnight was not convenience. It was a question, a risk, sometimes a mistake. Before refrigeration, food did not politely sit there being helpful. It was warming up, sweating, souring, drawing flies, and moving, hour by hour, toward becoming something else. So how did people survive in a world where food didn't wait for them? Not by keeping everything fresh the way we do now. Mostly, they survived by building their lives around the fact that fresh food was unstable by default. And once you see that, a refrigerator stops looking like a kitchen appliance. It starts looking like one of the strangest luxuries in modern life. The first thing to understand is that the real problem was not just cold, it was time. Today, we think of food as something you buy, store, and come back to later. That sounds basic, almost boring. But before reliable refrigeration, later was a much more dangerous word. Fresh milk in warm weather could turn quickly. Fish was a race. Meat was a race. Cooked food was a race. Even if something looked fine, that did not mean it was safe. And even when people knew a lot about food, and they did, knowledge did not create extra hours in the day. So daily life had less slack. You bought food more often if you could. You cooked more tightly around the day. You made faster decisions. You wasted less, but you also had less room to delay. When food has no patience, daily life becomes more urgent. And that changes more than the menu. It changes the rhythm of the house. Because if fresh food couldn't wait, then dinner couldn't wait for your schedule either. That's why the real answer to this question is not one clever trick. It's a whole system. And most of that system was not about keeping food fresh. It was about changing food before it changed on you. Salt it, smoke it, dry it, ferment it, pickle it, turn milk into butter or cheese, turn fruit into preserves, turn cabbage into something sour enough to survive the season, store grain, bake bread, cure meat. These were not just old-fashioned hacks. They were the architecture of ordinary life. And here's the part that's easy to miss. For most people, preserved food was not the backup, it was the menu. The goal was not, how do we make this taste freshly bought for 5 more days? The goal was much simpler. How do we make sure this is still food tomorrow? That is a very different relationship with food. Freshness, in the modern sense, was not always the center of the system. Stability was, and stability had a flavor. Saltier, sourer, drier, smokier, harder, sharper. You soaked the salt out of meat. You cut from the firm edge of cheese. You learned the smell of brine, the smell of a root cellar, the smell of a crock that was doing what it was supposed to do. Food did not need to feel untouched. It needed to survive. Now, yes, people absolutely used cold when they could. There were cellars, root cellars, ice houses. Later, there were iceboxes. In some places, winter ice was cut, packed in straw or sawdust, and stored for months. Underground rooms stayed cooler and darker. That helped with potatoes, apples, onions, cabbage, barrels of preserved food. But this is where modern intuition goes wrong. Cool is not the same as cold. Cold is not the same as reliable. And reliable is not the same as safe. A cellar is not a refrigerator. An icebox is not a refrigerator. Cold helped. It did not create modern certainty. It depended on weather, architecture, season, transport, money, and where you lived. In one household, milk might stay cool enough for a while. In another, summer simply won. And that meant even when people had access to cold, they still had to manage food actively. Watch it, smell it, use it quickly, boil it again, turn it into something else. Nothing was really passive. That may be the biggest difference of all. Today, the refrigerator lets us postpone decisions. Back then, the kitchen was full of decisions. Use it now, reboil it, salt it, dry it, feed it to someone today. Hope tomorrow is cooler. A pre-refrigerator kitchen was not a quiet storage space full of future meals. It was a place of constant intervention. A roast did not just become leftovers, it might become hash the next morning. Stale bread became pudding, stuffing, or soup thickener. Extra milk became butter, soft cheese, or a problem. Fruit had to be eaten, baked, dried, or preserved before it collapsed. Even the room would have felt different. A warmer kitchen, steam on the windows, damp cloth over bowls, the sour note of something fermenting, smoke caught in wooden beams, a bucket on the floor, crocks and barrels in the corner, flies in summer, a lid lifted, a cautious sniff, the dull, cool smell of a cellar below the house. Not filthy, necessarily, that's too simple, but closer to the edge, closer to weather, closer to insects, closer to damp, closer to the fact that food is alive for a while and then it isn't, and that closeness created work, constant work. This part matters because old food systems get romanticized very easily. We picture rustic kitchens, handmade cheese, smokehouses, jars on shelves, and yes, there was skill in all of that. A lot of skill, but there was also labor. Repeated labor, daily labor. Someone had to salt the meat, skim the milk, scrub the containers, keep grain dry, check the cellar, keep mice out, reboil food, watch the weather, preserve summer produce for winter, notice when something smelled strong in a normal way and when it smelled wrong. Someone always had to pay attention, and that burden often fell on women, servants, and anyone whose life was tied to household work. So when we talk about what the refrigerator replaced, it didn't just replace old preservation methods, it replaced vigilance. It removed thousands of tiny judgments from daily life. Is this still good? Can it last until morning? Should this be boiled again? Is that smell sour or spoiled? Can we risk it? That uncertainty used to be built into ordinary living. And people did get sick. Not from everything, not constantly. People were experienced, adaptive, often extremely knowledgeable. But modern refrigeration, combined with modern food safety, changed the odds. It created more margin, more time, more control, more room to be messy without paying for it immediately. And that's the real payoff here. The refrigerator did not just keep food cold, it changed time. It made delay possible. It made leftovers normal. It made weekly grocery shopping practical. It made milk feel dependable. It made dinner less fragile. It let food fit around human schedules instead of forcing human schedules to bend around food. That is a huge change. So huge, in fact, that we barely see it anymore. Open your fridge right now, and you'll probably find evidence of it everywhere. Something you forgot, something you're saving, something you bought for later, something half-used, something waiting for the version of you who will cook tomorrow. For most of history, that quiet little promise did not exist. Food did not wait for people. People lived on the clock of food. Refrigeration reversed that. And that may be one of the quietest revolutions in everyday life.